Hey everyone, it's finally time to talk about legendary items. This video is going to be a bit of feedback, a bit of game design, and just talking over the issue and what's been going on with it. So it's fair to say, I think, that legendaries have become a little bit of a controversial topic. Yes, in Warlords and Mists of Pandaria with that model, but also with the Legion model. Personally, I think as many of you will know from my past videos, I haven't been the biggest fan of this system since the start of the alpha, but that said, I've got to admit that I just haven't really been that bothered by it that much personally. If anything, it's been the source of a few good laughs and a bit of a guild meme. It took a month for one of our members to actually get a drop. So I don't have one at the minute, and that's not really bothered me too much. I don't particularly mind about gear, so I'm fine to wait, but not everyone who's playing the game is doing it in the same way that I am, and just because it's not really bothering me that much personally, it doesn't mean that it's not a concerning topic for many, and that's why I'm going to cover it today. There are a few different angles to approach this from. First, there's game balance. I think that's a pretty boring angle. I mean, obviously it's super important, but it's just the balancing of numbers. Then there is the situation that it creates with pugs and all the social stuff, and then there's the broader topic of the game design of this system, whether it really adds value and excitement to the people who are playing the game. Specifically, I wonder whether it's a system that's focusing too much on a few very small cool moments at the expense of providing weeks of fulfilling gameplay. It's probably a topic that I want to blow out into a longer video, but it does seem like Blizzard is getting a little bit mixed up about joy and happiness. I'm referring to a George Lucas talk, which I know seems weird to pop up here, but I think he had a pretty good little point. So his whole point was that in life, it's all about seeking long-term joy, the stuff that makes you overall a happy person. It's about getting that over seeking a short-term burst of happiness, because while that reaches a great peak, it does not last. And I think about the legendary system within that context. So the design of the legendary system is pretty much all about having these rare moments that are supposed to be absolutely elating. However, I think it's fair to say that they don't really do much to provide a baseline sense of joy, for your day-to-day activities, the feeling that you're chipping away at something. And I'd say that the day-to-day stuff is what really counts with an MMO. I think that the game's loot mechanics should be helping you with progression and really be just adding to that overall sense of just, baseline joy. You log in, you progress a bit, you feel happy about it, it's all good. However, the moments of really super extreme happiness, like just after you've downed a really hard progression boss, I think they should be firmly in the hands of the player's actions and not tied to a more random system like this. One of the reasons why I think the feeling of elation is so great after downing a major kill is because it's really down to how you and your team came together to overcome a challenge. It's really something that you directly worked for. With the legendary system, though, I do feel that it's trying to replicate that type of feeling, that you really remember a month after the fact. But I think the legendary system perhaps does it in a rather hollow way, because of this random element that overall is less effective than, say, a hypothetical alternative system, which would give you the same reward, albeit in a way that has a bit more player control where you're earning it over time. Now, that is sounding very similar to the legendary system of Warlords and MoP. Obviously, the way that Blizzard implemented it specifically in Warlords and MoP left quite a lot to be desired. It's also worth pointing out that when you create super powerful items like this, that are reasonably obtainable for all players, what it does is it ends up creating a barrier to entry to some forms of the game's content. Now, this isn't something that I experience personally. I play in a guild that's thankfully full of very reasonable people, so no one is going to be kicked for not having a legendary. However, I've seen so many reports of people having a bad time with pugs in the pre-made finder, a lot of that surrounding legendaries, and I think I have to take some of those reports in good faith and those people are being truthful. It does seem like this system has created a social barrier to entry that, unlike some of the more recent legendaries, isn't one that players have a great degree of control over, past just playing the game more so that you get more rolls of the dice. Now, another element of this is that the current legendaries do take quite a lot of design language from Diablo 3. Now, what I really like about Diablo 3 legendaries is their ability to augment how your character is and how you actually play the game and what build you take. Now, that's actually really similar to the idea of, say, set pieces in World of Warcraft, and they really can shake up that gameplay from tier to tier. I actually really do like that. Now, where I think the Diablo 3 inspiration is leading us into some problems is the method of acquisition. In Diablo 3, it's a game that's all about rapid iteration. You are doing a greater rift to get gear to do a higher level greater rift. It's a constant speedrun against your past self, and within that, being overpowered feels great because you're overpowered in comparison to your past self in a way that has hardly any negative social downside to other players, which, makes it a system that works for Diablo 3. Now, eventually in D3, yeah, players begin to not care about this, but I think it's an undeniably compelling gameplay hook for that game. Taking it into World of Warcraft, though, does seem to be rather tricky in my mind. You really want that feeling of being overpowered, but you can't actually be overpowered in World of Warcraft without it negatively impacting other players and the balance of the wider game, which is a pretty tricky situation to be in for the game designers who are working on the game. Now, this means that a system like the Legendaries pretty much just has to add headroom to everyone's maximum amount of power such that everybody reaches roughly the same level of power at the end of the gearing process, and that way there's parity between all the different classes. Normally, this increase in power happens slowly via gameplay as you progress. Well, with the Legendary, I actually see it as being a little bit like you're able to progress in the normal way of, just running dungeons, getting some gear, whatever. You can progress in that normal way to, for the sake of argument, 80% of your maximum power. But above that, it's kind of just a roll of a dice for the final 20. Now, I don't think that's a particularly good design blueprint for the game, both in terms of a social perspective, but also the game balance, and especially since in World of Warcraft, there is that entire social element that surrounds everything, and you can't really just, go grind out a whole bunch of greater rifts like you would in Diablo. So if I was to draw all of this into some sort of loose conclusion, if we all have to reach the same relative level of character power, does it not make sense to attempt to get as much gameplay out of that journey as we possibly can? Now, if we are to say that that is the case, is it a net positive to take a portion of that progression out of that system and then throw it completely on a slot machine? And now I'm not talking about, a bit of gear can Titanforge, it's still got its base item level. I'm talking about a pure sort of 1-0, you either get the amazing Legendary or you do not. Would we not be better served with you earning that power, the power that's currently assigned to the Legendaries, week by week as you complete content that's in the game? Overall, I believe the answer to those questions is yes. That's just my opinion though, and that's coming from somebody who's a heroic raider who tries to get 2 nights a week of raiding in. The initial pitch that we got for the Legendaries was to recapture the feeling of old world drop epics. I don't think this system has managed to complete that goal. Those items were a bit of spice on top of regular gameplay, but at least from, people who I've talked to and the research that I've done, they weren't really an integral part of the end game progression of vanilla. Now remember, I didn't play in vanilla. My main experience of those world drops was feeling rich as fuck after I got a world drop that I sold for 140G when I was level 29. I thought, fuck yeah, I'm going to save this up for my mount. Felt like I was on top of the world over 140G. I guess that was a bit of money in early TBC, but, I don't have the most experience with the world drop, the rare world drops that Blizzard were sort of trying to emulate, or at least, on the face of it, were trying to emulate with the Legendary system. So I think they've somewhat maybe missed out on that goal, and if they want to recapture those old world drop epics, then maybe they want to try something else. And overall, I'm just not really sure that these Legendaries are the best thing overall. Of course, that's just my opinion, so what do you think? Have these Legendaries fulfilled their original goal? Do you think they're a good thing for the game or a bad thing for the game? And do you think they're fun? I think it's worth pointing out that I actually like the idea of augmenting your abilities and, those little effects, the sort of the green text that these Legendaries have. I think that's actually really cool. I almost just wish they were delivered to us in a different manner that maybe wasn't as based on the randomness. But anyway, that's it for me. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.